Hi, everyone. It is me, Sailor Star Fighter Dustin here. And today I'm going to tell you some of the binds that came with being the first man sailor fighter. Now, there are those in the Sailor Moon followership, and they know who they are, so no need to say names or handles, so I don't even know them, who, don't want to welcome me as the first sailor fighter. They'll bring up in the books and say, "Oh, well, you were a woman who was only somehow passed yourself off as a man." How that was done in the books, I do not know. But we're not talking about the drawing books. We're talking about Sailor Moon Sailor Stars or Sailor Moon Stars, because in both of those, I was a man, all right? And I was a sailor fighter. And I also happen to be a songster, work for a song team called the Free Lights or the Tri-Lights, because that would have been the name that Deke would have given them. And a lot of folks ended up believing that the songs that we were singing, they didn't know that we were really singing songs to Aldolin Cockaboo, who herself in the book, as well in Stars, is a sailor fighter herself. But in Sailor Stars, the first telling, she was not a sailor fighter. And even if she was, she never shapeshifted, and she was slain by Sailor Galaxia early before anyone else. Well, I take it back, because there were other folks that got slain. I mean, Darien got slain in Sailor Stars, and you didn't learn that until the end. Same thing in Stars. Well, anyway, a lot of folks don't like to welcome me as the first man sailor fighter because some of them say it would go against the oversight that Naiko Takaguchi came up with about 30 or 31 years ago, or 32, something like that. Well, here's what I say about that oversight. Well, it was meant to be broken, you know. And if there was some folks in Toei that took freedoms with Sailor Stars, which they took freedoms with all the four other followings of Sailor Moon that they drew between 92 YL till 95 YL, they took a lot of freedoms. And that meant they didn't really follow the books. Some of the things played out the same way, but most of the things did not. And in Sailor Stars, it didn't really play out the same way. So I was a man sailor fighter. I became Sailor Star Fighter. And a lot of folks out there always like to offshoot me with Serena. Now, me and Serena were only friends. And it was my mistake for reading more into it than what it was. Serena would tell me she had a boyfriend, but the boyfriend wasn't around, so I didn't really, think that was earnest. It wasn't until after everyone beat Sailor Galaxia, more like they beat Madness, and Darien comes back, and I told Serena, I am happy that your boyfriend is back. And I told Darien, take good care of Serena. And he said, oh, I will. And I said, I'm only kidding. Now, a lot of folks might wonder, if I'm the first sailor fighter to be a man, why am I not on look for that? Why do some in the Sailor Moon followership look down upon me and think of it as some kind of shameful thing? And that whole oversight that only girls or women can be sailor fighters, is that the grounds to why some folks in the Sailor Moon followership don't want to give me on look? Because they're worried about some oversight being broken? Well, I have news for you folks. The oversight was broken in between 95 YL when me and Jordan and Jillian came along. So the oversight was broken. So get over it, all right? And you don't want to give other folks the onlook for being men sailor fighters. I mean, Jordan, he was a man sailor fighter too, and so was Jillian. Hell, even Ernest was a sailor fighter who who's another man sailor fighter. You know, and what I never really quite understood, okay, Snoop Dogg was Sailor Son too. What I never really could understand was why so many folks were open-minded to it now than they were back then. I don't know. All I know is that I'm a man sailor fighter, the first man sailor fighter. And if some folks out there couldn't handle that due to that oversight, well, that was just too bad. You know, I wasn't going to say I'm sorry for being a man and being a sailor fighter. Sorry that I broke this oversight that some folks in the interwebs believe that Naiko Takaguchi came up with. And even if she did come up with it, Toei didn't have to follow it. And you might say, oh, well, in Stars, I was a man too, you know. So, yeah, you can't go say, and you're going to bring up the books and say, oh, the books. Well, we're not talking about what happened in the drawing books. We're talking about me being a man sailor fighter in the drawing show. The first nine between 90 YL1 and the 20 YL1. Those are the ones I'm talking about. Not the books. All right? Not the plays, not the song plays, the drawing show itself. So, yeah. I was the first man sailor fighter who opened that door. And Jordan and Jillian as well. We made it where men like Ernest P. Worrell and Snoop Dogg could be sailor fighters. And that they could get the same on-look for being a sailor fighter than every other sailor fighter. And there are some in the Sailor Moon followership who believe that men and women can be sailor fighters. No need if the oversight says they cannot. Because let's get true about this oversight. It isn't like Naoko Takaguchi can make anyone follow it. And even if she could, I don't think she would. Alright? I'll see you all later.